Hey, everybody. It's the morning of UFC 241, and I listened to your guys' comments. Here is the microphone that I use. And what I've noticed is when I do my podcast and stuff, I lean in and talk into it. And when I do my video stuff, I tend to lean back. So I'm going to lean forward a little bit to see if that helps the audio. So please let me know if it's better. So anyway, it's the morning of UFC 241, and I'm doing the Serious post-show. I'm doing the Serious post-show, so I'm going to be up till like 3 in the morning. So I tend to sleep late on fight days. By the way, please call in SiriusXM, the post-fight show. I'm on from 1 in the morning to 3 in the morning. It's me and RJ Clifford. So please call in if you feel like it, because it makes the show much more interesting for us, because a lot of people don't call in that early in the morning. So what I'm doing today is kind of a frequently asked questions thing on my comment section, because a lot of people have been asking the same stuff or commenting on things, so I'm just going to answer them on video. Now, the reason, by the way, the blinds are open right now is my dog is sunbathing behind me. Usually I close that because it's distracting, but I'm leaving it open for my dog. So that brings me to one of the points people always ask me about. You need to put up a background or a studio and kind of make it look better behind you. First off, it's part of my living room, so I can't cordon this off and make something out of it because I go through and I live here. Secondly, I can't put up something temporary, like a little temporary thing visually, because I have 2 pit bulls sleeping behind me. They would wonder what that thing is and knock it down. What are you doing back there? If you have 2 dogs that are big like I do, you can't put up anything temporary that could be knocked down. So that's why I don't have a background or anything behind me. I use this room, and if I put up something flimsy that I could move, the dogs will just knock it over and destroy it. So they're sleeping by my feet right now. So that's why I don't have like a studio set up. Something is coming up where I might have a studio set up soon. If this opportunity works out, I'll kind of make a studio out of one of my rooms here, and it'll look much better. But for now, you're stuck with the background that's my living room. So, some other stuff I've been asked about. Why aren't you doing fight picks anymore? That's been a big one. I had a deal with fightpicks.com. You guys remember that? And promo code and all those things. That's how I got paid. Nobody signed up. So I gave the promo code every time, and nobody signed up, so I didn't make any money. So I stopped doing it. So I was doing 1 pre, 1 post, let's say an average of 3 shows a month. That's 6 shows of fight picks. I would do a post and pre, and nobody signed up. So it was a lot of work for nothing. Why don't I pick fights anyway? The problem with picking fights, because I've been breaking down fights for 12 years, and if you're watching this channel, you must think I'm at least decent at it. The problem I have with picking fights is you can do the best analysis in the world and break down everything and every aspect of everything, and if your pick's wrong, people go, you don't know shit about MMA. You know, if my breakdowns were 40% bullshit, you guys would be upset. 40% of what I said is just wrong. You would go, Jimmy's not good at this, he sucks. In picking fights, if you're 60% accurate, you're doing great. If you've ever taken a statistics class, if you are 60% with picking fights, you are mathematically doing phenomenal. So that disparity between, I want my breakdowns to be 100% right, and everything I'm telling you, whether it's right or wrong, can be justified. You might not agree with everything, but it can be justified. I can point to things and say, see, but look at this. When you go to pick fights, more than half is great. But people use that as a referendum on your breakdowns. Your breakdown must be wrong because you chose the wrong person. Well, those are 2 different things, or 2 totally different skill sets, essentially. I would say skill sets, but they're mathematically very different. You could have broken down Ben Askren versus Jorge Masvidal perfectly, every in and out, every little problem, every little thing that each fighter will face, and not predict that Jorge Masvidal was going to flying knee knock him out in 5 seconds. The inherent unpredictability of our sport makes it interesting. So I will pick fights if you guys want me to. If you guys think, please let me know in the comment section. If everybody wants me to do it, I'll do it. It's just too many people look at that and go, whether or not you know anything about MMA or whether or not your breakdown was correct, rather than was the breakdown correct? Because you can have a breakdown that highlights everything. Here's what I think the fight comes down to, and this, and that. And at the end, there's a pick. And people tend to focus on the pick more than the information, which to me, the information is more interesting. But I'll do it if you guys want me to. So What else? Okay, so I'm going to scroll through the comment section from the last one. Almost 10,000 views, which I appreciate. That's kind of a big marker for me. I'm just getting started with this stuff. So, all right. What are some other things that people always say I'm unbiased? I've always tried to be unbiased. Even when I had jobs with promotions, I tried not to be biased. And you got to remember, the UFC's narrative, Bellator's narrative about this stuff. I was never told what to say. In Bellator or the UFC or any promotion I worked for, they never said, this is our guy, push him. Don't criticize Conor. They never said that, ever. To the UFC's credit, to Bellator's credit, I was never given the pull aside, hey, push Michael Chandler, he's our guy. Never. I was never told that. So when you see a fighter, a commentator, pushing a narrative, in my experience, it's never a top-down pressure. They might feel pressured by the fans or by the promotion or somebody to back a particular guy, but we're never pulled aside and given notes like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, be sure that you talk about this guy because that's Dana's guy. No, we're really allowed to say whatever we want. So when you see a fighter, or commentator, it's the same thing these days, doing that, it might be pressure they feel, or it's what they really think. They might really think so-and-so's a great fighter, and they're getting a big push by the UFC. When, for a great example, my first Fox Death show was Stipe Ngannou. I did it with, I know it was Ken Flo, and I think it was Rashad Evans. I know it was Ken Flo was there. I think Rashad Evans was there too. I don't remember who the other person was. But they both picked Ngannou. I picked Stipe. They really believed Ngannou was going to win. It was going to knock Stipe out. They were on the hype train with everybody else. It wasn't the UFC wants us to push Ngannou. They really believed. We were talking in the green room about it. They really believed Ngannou was going to knock Stipe out. I disagreed. I thought Stipe was going to win. But there is no, hey, guys, in the production meeting, here's the deal. Ngannou is the UFC's guy. We're pushing Ngannou. Those conversations don't happen. I want you guys to really understand that if they pick somebody that the UFC is kind of getting behind, it's because they really believe that. Or maybe they feel a certain pressure, but they're never, it's your ass if you pick the wrong person or if you don't back our guy. It really, in my experience, never happened. So that's the honest truth. I'm just going through the comment section to see what I can answer for you guys. I already wrote about this, but following excitement, Stipe would dust Fedor in his prime. He's too long and skilled. And I wrote back, if you read it, I can't say Stipe wouldn't beat Fedor in his prime. Stipe is, to me, the number 2 heavyweight of all time. But, man, a prime Fedor was really amazing. He was really, really great. And he might win, but say he would dust him and just smoke him. I mean, I don't think anybody smokes a prime Fedor in his pride run. I think he's absolutely awesome. So, anyway, but I responded to that. I wrote that down. So, this is Motivator. Totally disagree with the heavyweight analogy. Best of all time. Nogueira not in the conversation. I think Nogueira is in the conversation. Completely. I think Minotauro is one of the greatest of all time. Verdum, first to submit Kane, Fedor, and Nogueira. I definitely think Verdum should be in the conversation. For sure. I don't think he's number 1. I think he should be in the conversation. For somebody saying Verdum is the greatest heavyweight of all time, I disagree, but I see where you're coming from. I definitely see your logic. A prime Verdum was really good. Problem, he had a lot of ups and downs in his career. Through Pride, through the UFC. Had some great peaks, but a lot of valleys as well. That's why. Another thing. This is Krasimir Kosic. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I put Stipe over Fedor. Fedor's a beast, but nobody can deny he had a bunch of nobodies thrown at him during that time. Pride had a thing where, Fedor would fight these amazing fighters and then get Zuluinho. It was Zulo's kid, this gigantic dude who had no business being in there. Ogawa, he had no business being in there with Fedor. Kazuyuki Fujita, tough at one time, no business being there with Fedor. The Japanese liked a lot of freak show fights. So while Fedor was on his Pride run, he would occasionally get fighters that you were like, what the hell is going on here? But the same thing happened with everybody in Pride. Wanderlei Silva running through some amazing fighters would occasionally get somebody Shungo Yama where you'd go, what is he doing in there with him? No, but Tsuyoshi Kosaka. I liked not Tsuyoshi Kosaka. No, I'm blanking on his name. Kiyoshi Tamura. Kiyoshi Tamura had no business being in there at that time with Wanderlei Silva. So that happened to everybody in Pride, where fighters would go on these runs full of great fighters and then get these weird softballs that made no sense. I agree with that, but I think the big names in that run overshadow the fact that he had the occasional softball. Stipe got no softballs, and I think that is important in evaluating his legacy. Stipe got no softballs at all. They were all tough. Jimmy Smith is an alternative universe Joe Rogan. If you've never done DMT or eaten elk meat, I have eaten elk meat, but I've never done DMT. Something else. Scrolling down, there was other stuff that people were asking. How come nobody mentions Junior Dos Santos when talking about the best heavyweights ever? Once again, look. Somebody else asked me. They said, "What's your criteria when you talk about the greatest of all time?" It's 3 things: streaks, how many won in a row, the names on that streak, and how you finish them. The performances, essentially. So those 3 together indicate greatest of all time. If you look at Joe Louis versus Muhammad Ali, about who's the greatest boxing heavyweight of all time, Muhammad Ali faced every huge name in his era. So he had a great streak. They had great names. He fought a lot of outstanding fighters. He was a great heavyweight in an era of great heavyweights. How did he beat them? He generally looked fantastic beating them. Won by knockout, and when he didn't, he was still clearly technically superior. So he had the streak. He had the names, amazing names. Floyd Patterson, Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Kenny Norton. Although Kenny Norton got robbed, in my opinion. Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, had an amazing streak. Amazing streak as heavyweight, longest heavyweight run at the time. But they called it the Bum of the Month Club. There just weren't a lot of big names. Rocky Marciano, an amazing streak, 49-0. There weren't a lot of great heavyweights in Rocky Marciano's era, in Joe Louis's era. So they don't have the names. Rocky Marciano has knocked a lot of fighters out, had a great streak, 49-0, but who the hell did he beat? I read somewhere his average title defense age was 43 years old. That's insane. Just a lot of guys were over the hill in Rocky Marciano's era, so he doesn't have the names. So when you talk about greatest of all time, generally you go with Muhammad Ali. If someone doesn't agree with Muhammad Ali, it's Joe Louis. Those are the 2 for that reason. So it's streaks, names, and performances. JDS had great performances, certainly had that. Knocked out Kane, that's amazing. Didn't have a lot. He couldn't put the streak together because Kane came and took the title from him, and he just didn't get that run of 5 or 6 like Stipe did. So that's why GDS deserves to be in the conversation. That's why he's not number 1. What about Romero's wrestling? The problem Romero has with his wrestling, and it is world class, it is awesome, it's absolutely fantastic. He's facing a stocky guy who's built like a freight train, and Romero uses his wrestling. I don't think he's that smart with his wrestling, which is weird because he's amazing at it. But he doesn't use it as much as I would expect a guy who's as good as he is to use it. He generally relies on his striking. If you look at the Luke Rockhold fight, never really tried to take him down. The last Whitaker fight that I called, I thought there were a lot of times he could have taken him down, just chose not to. I think he can. If he decides to do it, he'll have the takedown advantage tonight. But he just doesn't go to it as often as I would expect, and at the times I would expect. It's weird when he chooses to stand up and when he chooses to go for a takedown. So it's all about his decision making. Now, I'm GHKKGHK. 6 hours ago, I'm going to talk about his comment. I don't agree with quite a few things here. Some of what you're saying is a stretch. Saying Yoel has trouble winning if he doesn't get the KO is an overstatement. He has only lost to 2 people in his career. Making a statement like that makes it sound like he has a hit-and-miss record. He doesn't have a hit-and-miss record. He tends to finish guys. I'm not saying he tends to lose. I'm saying he tends to get finishes. So it tends to be KO or he doesn't win. Now, he doesn't have a hit and miss record. The point is he relies on his ability generally to knock guys out. He has trouble putting together whole rounds of activity, where that's usually how people win decisions. Yoel Romero doesn't win a whole lot of decisions. He just doesn't. And so what I mean is not that he has a hit and miss record. He's won the vast majority of his fights. It's that when he does win, it tends to be by knockout. So 3 losses, 2 by decision, 13 wins, 11 by KO. He tends to win by knockout, and when he doesn't, he loses by decision. When he does lose, it tends to be because he gets outworked for 3 rounds. So that's what I mean by that. Not that he wins some, lose some. It's that when he does win, it tends to be by knockout. And when someone puts pressure on him, he only fights in spurts, which is why when he does lose, he tends to lose by decision, both Robert Whittaker, but that's how he tends to lose. So that's what I mean. Nate has nowhere near this. This is the same person. Nate has nowhere near the same style or offense as Tony or Holloway. Both are more dynamic strikers, have better footwork, and cut off the cage better than Nate. I do agree they do have better footwork than Nate. Nate is very flat-footed, but in terms of the punching volume offense, both guys are volume guys. Tony, Holloway, and Diaz are all volume punchers. Yes, they have better footwork. I do agree with you. They do cut off the cage better. But Nate has a volume pressure boxing style. So does Tony Ferguson. So does Holloway. Both guys are a bit more explosive. That is true. But what I mean by that is a volume boxing attack. Boom, boom, boom. Not a whole lot moving forward and outworking you with the hands. That's what they do really well. Nate does pressure, but doesn't take the cage away from fighters. I disagree. He doesn't cut them off, but with that pressure, that's how he takes the cage away. He generally walks forward and makes somebody fight in a small octagon. Using RDA as a wrestler to prove Nate has a problem with wrestling is also a stretch. I disagree. Number one, RDA did take him down and did use his wrestling, but ignoring RDA, he's always had trouble with wrestlers. That's how Benson Henderson beat him. That's how the vast majority of fighters who beat A. Diaz, brother, that's how they do it, by out-wrestling him. RDA isn't just a wrestler. His jiu-jitsu is better than his wrestling. But that's how he beat Nate. So the guys that stick to the takedown are the ones that beat the Diaz brothers. That's what they do. So I agree with part of what you're saying, but I also disagree with part of what you're saying, and that I do believe wrestlers give Nate trouble. They always have, given Nick trouble as well. I think he has a similar style to Tony and Holloway. Yes, they have better footwork, but the volume punching is definitely similar with both guys. And Yoel Romero, I'm not saying that he's win some, lose some. I'm saying that when he doesn't get the knockout and goes to decision, his odds get a lot worse. Joshua Covarrubias, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I find it really interesting that you didn't mention Kane for the GOAT conversation in the heavyweight division like a lot of people do, and I absolutely agree that Stipe is the best heavyweight champion in UFC history. And you asked what you look for in a GOAT. I just said streaks, names, performances. I don't mention Kane because Kane just didn't have the run in the heavyweight division. He just didn't have the run, which is incredibly unfortunate because you could argue that Kane at the top, when he was at his best, could beat anybody, was the best heavyweight of all time. But it just didn't last long enough. He just wasn't able, because of injuries, to put together the streak where we can evaluate him as the best of all time. It sucks, but he had too many damn injuries. That's what killed Kane. If you look at Kane's performances, his performances, is a good way to put it, are some of the best of all time. He just, because of his knee injuries, never got that streak that, qualifies him as the best. The longest one he had, in terms of, at the top, was Bigfoot Silva, not great. Junior Dos Santos, that was impressive. Bigfoot Silva, once again, not that impressive. And Junior Dos Santos again. So it was a 4-fight win streak against the same 2 guys. Before that, obviously, Czech Congo, Ben Rothwell, Nogueira, Brock Lesnar. Nogueira is the only one on that list right now who I would say is an all-time great. Brock, I think, was, I don't even want to say overrated, but, a limited heavyweight. If he had been healthy and able to get a streak going, good chance he's the best of all time, but it didn't happen. So that's why I don't mention Kane in that conversation. And I think that's about it. But and just answer some questions for you guys. Oh, the why aren't you doing commentary somewhere else and doing this on television? Well, what people don't understand about commentary, doing it professionally for a living full time, is it's like musical chairs. There just has to be a spot for you available when the music stops, and that's the difficulty. You're not going to tune into any fight television and they don't have somebody. They all have someone. And the only way you get a gig is if that person's contract happens to run out right when you're available. And that's a difficult thing to do. And the MMA world is very, very limited in terms of working full-time. It's like fighting full-time. It's UFC, Bellator, PFL, and that's it. Anything else, you can work, you can bounce around and do stuff, but it can't be a full-time job where that's all you do for a living. And if there is no spot available, that's it. Well, I've already worked for UFC and Bellator. So, yeah, it's unlikely I'm going to be doing commentary full-time on television anytime soon. So, sorry to say that, but it's just the nature of the sport, I'm afraid. So, it's very, very niche. It's just not a lot available. So, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year, but that's the way it is. So, anyway, I think that is it. So we'll see. Let me know if the audio is better because I leaned into the microphone this time. So we'll see how that one goes. And I enjoy you guys a lot. Very much appreciate it. And let me know how you like the video and give it a subscribe if you like it. And I'll be talking to you soon.